We'll be creating this Voronoi overlay on top of these draggable circles. Voronoi overlays are a great way to enhance the hover interaction when you have a bunch of points. Because what the Voronoi overlay does is it gives you an interaction surface that is completely filled and maps each and every pixel that you could possibly hover on to the nearest point. Let's explore the basic mechanics of how to add a Voronoi overlay to this example, draggable circles. I'll start by forking this viz, and I'll call it Draggable Circles with Voronoi Overlay. Let's take a look at the documentation for Voronoi diagrams. This is a pretty neat example of a Voronoi diagram, which partitions the plane into cells representing the region of the plane that is closest to the corresponding point. Fun fact, the Voronoi diagram is the dual of the Delaunay triangulation. And this is what the Delaunay triangulation looks like. Given a set of points, it computes these triangles that connect all the points together. To compute the Voronoi shapes, we first need to compute the Delaunay triangulation. So let's try this. Over in our code, I will paste that reference example. And I believe we can import uppercase D Delaunay from D3 like this. Let me just see if that worked. Yeah, that seems to have worked just fine. We console.log Delaunay, which is a function. Okay, great. So that gives us D3 Delaunay in scope. And then to compute the Delaunay triangulation from our points, we can put something over here that invokes Delaunay.from. This appears to take an array of arrays where each inner array represents the x and y coordinates. So to figure that out, we need to use our data from the state, and I'll keep that around for reference. We can say data.map, a function that takes as input one row and returns an array containing d.x and d.y. I think that should do the trick. I'm going to console.log Delaunay just to see what we get. And that seems to have worked. We get all these properties, half edges, in edges, points, triangles. Now that we have that Delaunay triangulation, let's derive from it the Voronoi overlay. And here's our reference code, which I will paste down here. And this Voronoi function takes as input an array that defines the bounding box. So 0, 0 is x and y. This is the corner. And then this is width, and this is height. And I believe we already have in scope something called width and something called height. So let's use those. Now if we console.log Voronoi, we do get this object that contains a thing called vectors and Delaunay and circumcenters. So which one of these things do we need to access to actually make those cool shapes? For that, we can use voronoi.renderCell, and we want to call that for each element of our data array. So we can use a similar pattern to the one we used for circles, but instead use paths, SVG path elements. Then we can say .attr d is Voronoi .renderCell, passing in I, the index in the array, which we can get by defining a function that takes as input d and the second argument I, the index. So when we run this, boom! We get our cool Voronoi shapes. But they're not that cool right now because they're just black. So let's style this by saying fill none. and stroke black. And then stroke width 5. And we can use the interactive widgets to tweak these values to make it kind of fancy and playful. So that's the gist of how you can add a Voronoi overlay on top of a set of points. And I must say, there's nothing more satisfying than dragging something inside of these Voronoi diagrams and watching it update. And here's a challenge for you. Use a Voronoi diagram as the interaction surface for one of your existing visualizations, such as a scatterplot or a multi-line chart. These reference examples may be useful. This is that tooltip on scatterplot example by Nadi Bramer. I feel like this is one of the best implementations of this idea that I've seen. And if you scroll down, you can study all the source code here. This example by Mike Bostock showcases how you could use a Voronoi overlay for a multi-line chart. If you check this box here, you can see the Voronoi overlay. Thanks for watching, and good luck.